The Dark Cosmos. Stay cosmic. Everything started as an executive decision in the NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. As soon as it was established that interstellar travel was absolutely reliable and a cluster of exoplanets captured the attention of NASA's executives, they agreed to create the Battery Research Center in Maryland, which would be dedicated specifically to the exploration and study of these planets. Within months, there were exploratory robots on the surface of half a dozen exoplanets that could soon be useful for humanity, providing new resources and eventually maybe a second home. That's when I join a very important mission. My name is Melanie Lee, head executive of the Red 42 project. I'm in charge of the mission to explore, understand, and analyze the surface of the exoplanet temporarily known as Red 42. Which fondly reminded our scientists of our neighbour in the solar system. It is less dry than Mars, significantly smaller, with plenty of low hills, larger boulders every mile or so, already fascinating mineral deposits, and the currently most exciting fact about it, rivers. Though we're barely getting started. At the observation hall, dozens of scientists sit behind their computers, facing a large screen on the wall, showing us a live feed of the exploratory robot's view of the planet, along with the ongoing stats recorded on the sides of the image. I spend most of my days pacing the room, prying a few discoveries from these brilliant minds, in the hopes of making history and making Red 42 proud. New check-in, starting now. Exploratory robot Roger 1. Timing of the mission? I speak into the headpiece some of us wear, starting a new recording, along with Dr. Steven Silva, second in command in the Red 42 project.
Time since landing in Red 42, 9 days, 11 hours, 46 seconds.
General evaluation of the robot. Current state of Roger 1?
The robot continues working in ideal conditions. Mobilization system stable. Live feed optimal. 0 inconveniences at the time of check-in.
That's how every single report begins. Every day, my grand expectations for planet Red 42 dwindle just a little bit more. While other exoplanets have lost their exploratory robots due to extreme weather conditions, or even predators, that seem to be the only thing everyone on Earth wants to talk about. All I get from Roger 1 is a perfectly boring and empty red little planet that doesn't have more than the same old hills, shallow rivers, and strange-shaped red rocks. Then, I ask, general evaluation of the surface of the planet? Composition of the soil?
Generally similar as appreciated in the previous zones. Slight increase in iron, magnesium, and minerals similar in composition to nitrogen and phosphorus. Additional elements still unknown.
While other exoplanets have received new robots that are capable of providing more in-depth analyses of the contents they discover, this is the best we can do. My next question is, state of the atmosphere of the planet?
Unchanged. Oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide levels are stable. Additional elements detected remain unknown.
We could, technically, breathe on the surface of planet Red 42, but not until we have the equipment to study those elements that elude our little robot. Finally, I ask, additional developments?
None.
Stephen replies, more and more worn down each day.
No signs of movement on the planet. No signs of life detected. No changes perceived in the atmosphere or the soil. No disturbances observed at all.
Every day is more of the same. The project that should be the greatest excitement of our lives becomes a tedious routine. The words feel like radio static filling the room. They lose meaning. They tumble over each other. They become meaningless chants. New check-in, starting now.
Mobilization system stable.
State of the atmosphere?
12 days, 1 hour, 3 seconds.
Roger 1.
Elements still unknown.
General evaluation?
Oxygen levels are unchanged.
Additional developments?
Still unknown. Still unknown. Still unknown.
And then finally, fucking finally, something happens. Something big enough to have me throw open the double doors to the office of Vincent Warden, the Chief of Operations of the Battery Research Center.
Dr. Lee, what the hell are you doing?
He snaps at me. Blood, I say simply, as I drop on his desk a yellow folder with the word confidential in bold red letters on the front. We found traces of blood on the surface of Red 42. He seems shocked, and interested in our planet for the first time. But I can see how, for him, this is nothing compared to the several alien creatures already captured on other planets.
Dr. Lee, you've been complaining about the robot's limitations on analyzing substances for weeks. How can you possibly know for sure that that's blood?
Roger 1 fails to analyze new substances, but we know what's in our blood, don't we? You name it, and this substance has it. Proteins, hormones, carbon dioxide, potassium, calcium, I could go on and on. There are more elements that we can't identify at the moment, of course, but it's close enough to raise an alarm. And now that you mention it, demand a new exploratory robot that could possibly explain this phenomenon. Vincent is quiet for a few seconds as he reviews the beginning of the file. Then he calmly tells me,
The folks at Atlas IV Project are the most advanced at studying life forms of their planet. Did you know that the composition of the creatures they were studying don't show any single similarity to anything from this planet yet?
I keep my mouth shut for the sake of keeping my job. But in my head, I think, well, obviously, the Atlas IV planet is larger than Jupiter. Anybody with half a brain could find something extraordinary in that vast terrain. Then Vincent adds,
I don't see how you can be so sure that it's blood.
We drove Roger 1 back to the spot in question, sir. It wasn't some sort of natural sediment. It was a trail of blood. There's something other than our robot in Red 42. Something that bleeds, something wounded. We have to investigate what it is. He sighs, in the exact tone to make me lose my patience.
Melanie?
Did you know I started my studies in med school before changing to the lanes that brought me here? I know blood when I see it, sir. I suspect that was the worst thing to say to him. I watch him clench his jaw, slowly close the folder and drop it on one of his desk's drawers.
I'll begin the process of requesting a new model of expandatory robots for you, Dr. Lee.
He says, and I can already picture the dull months of waiting for the administration to come through with this half-hearted promise.
But I'll tell you this, Lee. Give me a clear picture of whatever you think's left on that trail of blood, and I'll get you anything you want. Hell, I'll personally go to Red 42 to take the blood sample myself. Just don't you dare come back here without solid proof.
Oh, he has no fucking clue what he's asking for. The next day, I began my work with renewed vigor. I cleared my throat, put on my headpiece, and begin the recording of the daily report. New check-in, starting now. Exploratory robot Roger 1. Timing of the mission?
Time since landing in Red 42, 22 days, 12 hours, 13 seconds.
General evaluation of the robot. Current state of Roger 1?
The robot continues working in ideal conditions. Mobilization system stable, live feed optimal. 0 inconveniences at the time of check-in.
General evaluation of the planet. Any new developments? My question gives everyone in the room a pause, and some heads turn cautiously towards me. I have changed the sacred routine, but I don't have time to hear more of the same as always. Luckily, Dr. Silva knows how to go along with me.
The state of the soil and atmosphere of the planet remains stable and unchanged. No new developments have been perceived.
Good, I say, and proceed to change the course of our mission forever. We're starting the search and identify protocol. I want Roger 1 moving on a 50% increased speed. Turn off additional scanners if necessary. I want the live feed sharper, clearer, and with emphasis only on detecting foreign movements and sources of heat. We're returning to the spot where we found the trail of blood and starting from there. Starting in 3, 2, 1. At my sign, the group erupts into a wave of activity unlike anything we've seen since the first week at the job. People glued to their screens with fingers furiously tapping new codes for Roger 1. I barely blink throughout the day, hyper-focused on the live feed from the robot's camera, hoping to catch sight of a miracle. But no one, not the greatest skeptic and not the biggest enthusiast, could have imagined what happened next. Our efforts were fruitful. I made the right choice, clearly, because before the day ends, we get our first reward. The first irrefutable proof of something else existing on that planet. The moment that we put the best shot of evidence up on screen for everyone to see, there's an uproar that goes entirely against the excitement of the beginning of the day. The workers jump from their seats, and their chairs fall behind them with a loud clatter. After the breathless gasps and the stunned silence, everyone jumps to barking questions, praying to their gods, accusing me of all kinds of tricks, laughing nervously or bursting out of the room entirely. I'm frozen in place in front of everyone, looking up at the screen that sealed my fate. Stephen walks up to me, and I don't have to turn toward him to know that he's shaking.
Melanie, please tell me this is not what I think it is.
I can't, I reply, completely honest, overcome by fascination and some small amount of fear. I can't think of any other explanation except for that it clearly seems to be. That's a human footprint. On a planet where no human being has set foot before. We have found a human footprint. Everything changed after that day. I keep things confidential, and I don't tell the Chief of Operations of our discovery, because it isn't exactly what he asked for, and I want this exciting new stage to be all mine for a little longer. Half of the team in the Red 42 project is as eager and as restless as me, but I'm surprised to find the other half doesn't take the news very well. One of our most valuable scientists has some sort of nervous breakdown that put her out of work for a week. Some of them are less focused on their work than on coming up with conspiracy theories about how other countries reached the planet before us, or how NASA is toying with us as a part of an experiment. But I'm keeping an iron fist on the facts that have led us all here. I know what I saw, and I know it should be impossible. But unlike some people, I don't immediately reject it. I only become more and more determined to find out the full truth. The days at the research center are long and full of tension. Almost all the workers are working extra hours, and I personally haven't gone home since we caught sight of the footprint. Our poor little robot is working at nearly double the speed than usual, and we have deactivated most additional features in order to focus on velocity and detecting movements. It doesn't help that, since the very first trail of blood, the sightings only continue to increase. It feels as if during the first weeks, we were exploring the dark side of this foreign planet, and just now we're coming into the light. Perhaps it's the complete opposite, and we're driving into an obscure abyss that we would have been smart to avoid. Maybe we're walking directly into the beast's lair, and it would be wise to turn around. But here's the thing. Scientists' intelligence is a little overrated, or more accurately, misunderstood. No one in this room is exactly wise. These brilliant minds are slaves to curiosity, impulsivity, and competitiveness. Who cares if there are dangers beyond the red flags? As long as there's a significant discovery, we'll push through. With that dangerous mindset always present, we go headlong into this mission. New check-in starting now, I announce. Now at irregular intervals. Timing of the mission?
24 days, 16 hours, 50 seconds.
Stephen Silver replies, and knowingly skips to provide the strictly necessary information.
Exploratory robot Roger 1 is working now at double speed and minimal features. The state of soil and atmosphere of the planet continues to be stable and unchanged.
Report of the substances obtained since the last check-in?
2 instances of the substance we call Red 42 blood, 3 cases of similar materials, 4 occurrences of elements that share minimal characteristics, and constant presence of entirely unknown components.
That very last sentence hits a chord in my memory. Where else have I heard about discoveries made up of elements that have zero coincidence with anything from Earth? I immediately end the report and take Dr. Silver away from the hectic life of the observation hall and into the privacy of my office. Then I ask him something I recently heard from a less pleasant man. Did you know that the composition of the creatures they are studying in Atlas IV doesn't show a single similarity to anything from this planet?
So I've heard.
Stephen replied, fixing his glasses and wasting no time to go along with whatever I have under my sleeve.
What does that have to do with us?
If there's a chance that we have the same kind of specimen on our planet, we could secure the financial support and general interest that has been reserved for that stupidly big planet.
But how could we prove that? That information isn't public yet.
I have to make a pause to rein in my excitement, and hope that I don't look crazy when I tell him. That's up to you. This is your new priority, Stephen. I want you to do whatever it takes to get that information from the Atlas IV project. Break any rules, any laws, any knees or noses from our colleagues to get the information I require. Do it for Red 42. There's a brief moment of tension, and I almost think that Stephen will really reject my plan. But then...
You're insane,
he tells me.
But I'll do it. I'm just afraid to ask what you'll be doing in the meantime.
You'll see, I tell him with a smile. 3 days later, Stephen Silver walks back into the observation hall, looking more worn down than I've ever seen him. Rumpled clothes, unkempt hair, dark bags under his eyes, and wild stubble all over the lower half of his face. If he's also spotting a black eye, well, all of us pretend we don't notice. He's clutching a folder to his chest, as if his life depends on it. Maybe it does. Please give me the good news, I say as a form of greeting, but he shakes his head.
First, you're going to have to tell me what the hell is that.
Stephen points at the overly large board that I got set up on one of the walls of the hall. To be fair, I'm glad he asked. You see, they didn't give us the technology to analyze the substances we found as profoundly as we'd like. But, Stephen, we know enough. Now that we capture new samples every day, we can compare every one of them and detect patterns, similar or identical compositions, and present a few conclusions. I guide him toward the board, and I point at the results of the very last 73 hours or so. Red 42 blood is a constant, but it's not entirely unique. There are variations, which suggest 3 species or more moving around this area of the planet. Moving on, we found Red 42 excrement. Unpleasant, but fascinating, with even more variations. Give me a new generation exploratory robot, and I could tell you the diet of each creature that inhabits this world. There's more, Stephen. We've moved on from vague substances on the ground. We're into solid objects now. We have hairs, scales, broken wings, and small bones, and some of them definitely match with the blood and excrement samples. In the brief interlude when my body demands to take a breath, Stephen interrupts me. Judging by his smile, he has successfully disregarded any concerns for his safety or my sanity. He's as excited as me when he sees the pictures I have taped onto the board.
What are those, Melanie? Oh my god, please tell me everything. What are they?
That, my friend, is irrefutable proof that there are alien forms of life living on the planet known as Red 42! I announce. My voice is loud. I start clapping, and some of the scientists working closest to me briefly interrupt their work to clap and cheer as well. We've been celebrating for a full day. I lower my voice to address only Stephen again. It's possibly the best discovery of our careers, Stephen, but I can confidently tell you it's only the beginning. Yes, these are similar enough to what people have already found on other planets. We can temporarily call them Red 42 beetles. As far as we know, they even match the samples of scales we found on the ground. But we aren't going to announce this discovery yet.
We're not? Why the hell not?
Stephen exclaims. He knows we've been breaking our backs looking for this exactly. This discovery would change our lives and take the Red 42 project to the next level. He must think I'm crazy. They're not our mark, not our goal, I explain, stepping aside to gesture at him to move forward. Take a closer look. Come on. Stephen is skeptical. His eyes are focused on me, but when he finally faces the board, he's impressively quick to catch my point.
Holy shit.
He exhales and covers his mouth with one trembling hand.
Tell me everything. Now.
This specimen right here in the picture was cut in half, Stephen. Torn in the middle, pulled apart, broken in 2 pieces, whatever you want to call it, but that's not all. It's a mostly empty shell. I have reason to believe there's something out there that attacked, chopped, and devoured this little creature. This means we've got ourselves a predator. The hard work and extreme excitement keep me feeling too warm, as if we were working under the sun at all hours. But after I say those fateful words, even I can feel the chill that runs through the room and makes my colleague shiver.
A predator.
Stephen repeats my words and asks me.
And that's a good thing, right?
Obviously, I reply confident. We're a whole solar system away. We have nothing to fear but the fame that will come our way after we discover the creature in question and reveal the good news to the world. Everyone will go crazy, Stephen, I know it. Remember the footprint we found?
Honestly, I wish I could forget it. That thing was beyond unsettling, Melanie.
Oh, don't be so afraid. We're dealing with something big enough to leave that size footprint and smart enough to suck a beetle dry without chewing on its dry little exoskeleton. Anything that looks remotely human enough to leave that kind of footprint will be even bigger news than whatever dumb crustacean they found in Atlas 4. As if Stephen's frown wasn't enough to let me know I just said the wrong thing, he goes out and sighs.
Is that it? You're jealous because the Atlas IV project gets more money and attention?
I'm not, I tell him firmly, frowning as much as he is. But then I make the effort to put on a smile that might have looked odd on my stressed and tired face. I'm doing everything in the name of science. Now, give me the good news. What did you find in the Atlas IV archives? Stephen hesitates, and I suppose that I can't blame him for it. But once again, the excitement we share over this project and these potential discoveries fully outweigh his morals.
You were right.
He admits with a small grin as he passes me the folder.
One of our blood samples is a nearly identical match to the creature they identified in Atlas IV. We officially have exactly the same beings as them, and even more.
Stephen's words mark the beginning of a new wave of celebrations that very much bring tears to my eyes. But just as I promised him, it's only the beginning. In less than 24 hours, we would make a discovery that would put the known universe completely upside down. Reassured by the fact that we've already found a very significant discovery on our hands, the team behind Red 42 Project allows themselves to relax, at least a minimal amount. I actually stay home for one night and sleep better than I have since the start of the project. When I return for the new shift, Stephen is clean-shaven and in high spirits. The entire team, in the rows upon rows of computers of the observation hall, work steadily. We're in a great mood, and I'm only further inspired by a series of sketches I've received of possible shapes and sizes for alien creatures that could leave that kind of footprint and carry that kind of blood. Suddenly, everything comes to a halt. Time, heartbeats, breaths, and every electric system seems to freeze simultaneously. The very essence of the observatory hall comes to a grinding halt when we hear the scream. It's worse than what you'd hear in a horror movie. It's real. It sounds brutal and primitive. I've never known fear like that in my life. A woman in the room is screaming as if she's staring into the eyes of the Grim Reaper. I drop the papers on my hands, and almost everyone stops what they're doing to rush to her side, except for the others that just caught sight of the same thing that haunted her. There's a wave of curses and cries and exclamations of the most mind-bending shock imaginable. No matter how much we yell questions and demand answers, nothing makes sense, until finally, someone's able to rewind the images captured by Roger 1 and pause the video at the right frame.
Oh, fuck.
That's impossible, I say. I push people away from me as well as I can without taking my eyes off the screen. I stumble my way to the front desk and I stand up on it, careless of the computers and technical equipment, and everyone watching my movements. I stand tall, shaking and scared out of my mind in that room with dozens of other terrified souls. We're all staring at the exact same image on that giant screen. On the gritty red surface of planet Red 42, out of the solar system, where nothing and no one except for our little robot has ever landed. There's a woman. There's a human, living, breathing, bleeding woman standing there, captured for prosperity in one image that could change the fate of humanity. The aftermath of our discovery is hard to explain. The team behind the Red 42 project is broken. We're stuck in an endless loop where I push for us to keep working, searching for that elusive specimen, while the team refuses to work until they receive reassuring answers. And I'm forced to remind them that I have no more answers than they do, and the only way to find out more information is to go out and look for it. But my team has been shocked to their core. Too many of them decide they feel too stunned and sick to work at the moment. There are some serious accusations against me, against the Battery Research Center, against NASA. Some people are convinced that this is all a trick, that we have manipulated Roger 1 to show images that would impress audiences worldwide just for some financial gain. It's ridiculous! But it's enough to have a few of my colleagues go behind my back and voice their complaints to Vincent Warden and his office at the top of the research center. The meeting that happens between him, Dr. Steven Silver, and me is the final piece of the puzzle that will seal my fate. I can't bear to sit still while we discuss something so extraordinary. The two men stare at me as I pace Vincent's office and make my point. I tell them, it appears that all at once people have forgotten the risks and delights of devoting their lives to science. We signed up for unraveling the extraordinary, the shocking, and the impossible. I don't get why everyone is suddenly so scandalized. Did they think they wouldn't find something surprising while exploring a completely new planet? This was exactly the goal!
Cut them some slack, Melanie.
Stephen speaks up, sounding oddly calm for the way his hands are shaking due to his shattered nerves and the abundance of caffeine in his system.
This is something that nobody even considered. Strange and indescribable creatures are expected, but a human woman? Without a spacesuit, without any protection at all, on a planet where the human race has never been. This is just insane.
You don't have to tell me what we found, Stephen, I know. All I've done since then is stare at those images. I've overanalyzed every inch of her. She's all I care about right now. Vincent Warden clears his throat to get our attention. He seems somewhat confused, but at the very least interested in Red 42 for once. He asks us,
I thought we all agreed that thing isn't a woman until we've opened it up in a lab.
Stephen and I just shrug and wave him off. The technicalities can await for the written reports. We are used to some light attachments to our experiment and discoveries. Before sending him off to space, Roger 1 was like our little brother. But I need Vincent's support here, so I add, you aren't completely wrong, sir. We can't be sure it's human, just something that looks like us. All the more reason to get over the initial shock and get back to work.
Melanie, please.
Stephen interrupts me.
I'm just asking you to consider the moral consequences of this. Do you even know the religions of the members of your team? Their entire belief systems have been rocked because of the mere idea of a naked woman prancing around the surface of a strange planet.
I can't help but groan at his words and reply, I'm sorry, Stephen, I don't mean to be insensitive, but I really don't think there's room in this conversation for religion. This is between her and us.
That creature and us.
Vincent corrects me without an ounce of subtlety, and then he adds,
Let's get back on track, shall we? We'll see how to deal with the emotional, psychological, theological, or whatever kind of reactions later. For now, we can guess that the secret will be hard to keep. We must share the news, but we gotta come up with a plan of action to give to the press. So, what are we doing next? This stunning discovery finally has my attention, Dr. Lee. More than that, I'm willing to comply with all your demands. Just give me a clear strategy and the name of the robots you want. Just try to be quick. Let's say I'm meeting early tomorrow to...
I don't want any robots, I tell him. I know I interrupted him harshly, but I don't need any time to think about my next move. I knew what I had to do from the moment I first saw her. My colleagues don't look very thrilled about what I just said.
What do you mean?
God, no. Melanie, please don't say what I think you're about to say.
I want to go there. There's a cold pause in the room, until Vincent finds the strength to blurt out.
What the hell? What do you mean you want to go there? To your little red planet? Why?
However, Stephen is ahead of me. He looks like he's about to be sick, but he's already shrugging as if he knows it'd be useless to put up a fight.
This is an alien specimen, sir. There are good chances it wouldn't survive outside of its own planet. Additionally, there are even higher chances that it would bring foreign diseases to our world. The best strategy to study that creature is to trap it and set up a lab in its own natural habitat.
Then I speak up again and say, moreover, I can already tell you, gentlemen, she's smart. She knows Roger once saw her, and she's been hiding. Roger is fast, but still, the best we've got is blurry images between plants and big red rocks, as if she was a goddamn Bigfoot or something. Our robots couldn't catch and study her by themselves, and for God's sake, that would be inhumane. We need a human presence there. I want to be there, and I know I'm not the only one. I can gather an exceptional team. For starters, I know the two of you have worked in space stations before, just like me. Now, that last part, I know that neither of them expected it. It's great entertainment for me to watch their expressions go from terror to intrigue and finally, excitement. I know I need Steven Silver by my side, but to be fair, I'd prefer not to take Vincent with us. However, he's the only one who could secure us the support we need from NASA. Luckily for me, and our mysterious lady in outer space, I think I have their attention. Vincent says with awe,
We could make history!
We will.
Steven said.
We could also be about to make a terrible mistake, but I guess there's only one way to find out.
Then, let's do this. I'm being extremely serious when I say I've watched no group of people work as fast and efficiently as we did for this extraordinary mission. The Red 42 project reached a new level. Overnight, we became NASA's #1 priority, After we decided what to do, Vincent and I spent the whole night on video conferences with every major executive that needed to authorize this mission. To be brutally honest, some of them didn't believe us at first, or didn't understand the urgency of studying the creatures of the planet Red 42. However, we were able to convince all of them. One by one, they signed the necessary papers to authorize our mission. The very next day, before a scandalized member of my team could leak the news of a human-shaped alien loose out there, NASA formally announced the news of the quote-unquote most remarkable extraterrestrial specimen discovered in history, and our plan to pay her a visit as soon as possible. This meant that we had to get to work immediately. Vincent, Stephen, and I, along with 3 more scientists who specialized in extraterrestrial forms of life, started our physical preparation for the journey to Red 42. All of us had been in space before, working at any of the numerous active space stations or even on other planets. We just had to get back in shape. But none of us, not even the 2 longtime astronauts that would be in charge of the spaceship, had gone as far as Red 42. Beyond our solar system, beyond every planet humanity had set foot in. Usually, it takes experienced astronauts 2 months of preparation to go on a new journey after a period away from the field. Our little group had only 3 weeks to prepare. I think they would have sent us after a minimal medical checkup, if not for the unavoidable need to prepare the best spaceship available, along with a satisfactory laboratory to set up on the planet. It wasn't the first time something like this was pulled off. It was only the first time we did it so fast, for such a long trip, and for such a controversial goal. That is how, after 3 weeks of training and 4 weeks of cryogenic sleep while we spaceship traveled at interstellar speeds, I found myself stepping on the surface of the planet known as Red 42. Home of what I'm confident is the greatest discovery in the history of space exploration. Now that we are here, we have no time to lose. We prepare the laboratory, the first room, open to the atmosphere of the planet, and the second room, where we could perform any experiments or surgeries, as soon as we were certain we could bring the specimen into a closed space with us. If she can exist within that enclosed room, adapted to imitate the conditions of planet Earth for us, then we can probably bring her back with us. The possibilities are endless. So we put on our spacesuits, prepare the tranquilizing darts, and step onto the 2 small vehicles that were specially designed to transport us around this particular planet. We landed as close as possible to the spot where we first saw our Red 42 lady, but there's no way to know how long it will take us to find her again. Sitting beside me in one of the vehicles, Stephen is viciously typing on an electronic device to get first-hand knowledge about the conditions of Red 42, the gravity, the atmosphere, the ground, all of it. Aesthetically speaking, it feels a little too red, dry and depressing to be a second home for humanity. But technically speaking, this planet seems almost ideal to be habitable. We still need to perform plenty of tests to be sure, and none of us will take off our spacesuits yet. But in comparison to other planets, where one breath of air could immediately kill you, I can see how the Red 42 woman is capable of moving around so freely without protection. If she really is something close to a woman. If she exists at all. We drive for a long time. The vehicles follow the tracks of every sighting we've caught of her. A mysterious silhouette, a ghost, an illusion, a creature always in movement, always prepared to return to the shadows. The little robot, Roger 1, is always looking for her. And with the combined forces of our 2 vehicles, I know that we'll find her very soon. Every second that passes just brings us closer to her. We pass by dry valleys, beside dunes of maroon sand, around patches of grey but thriving vegetation that we'll surely study later on. And we drive past large and slightly luminescent boulders that catch my attention and always make me believe she'll be hiding right behind one of them. I wonder what would happen if she found us first. I wonder if she's violent, if she would assault us, if we would stand a chance against a power that we are completely unfamiliar with. We started our journey filled with adrenaline and hope, but with the quiet around us, the suspense, and the long hours with nothing to do but let our imagination run wild, all our good feelings have turned into apprehension and skepticism. I watch my colleagues fidget with their suits, and it's like I can read their minds. They're wondering if this planet is really safe, if we really should have trusted the analysis of a single lonesome exploratory robot. The ground could betray us and swallow us. The atmosphere could be slowly deteriorating our suits and eventually killing us from the inside out. We could run into the wrong kind of creature here. However, under the ticking of the clock displayed on the vehicles, with our palms sweating, our shoulders tensed, our eyes burning and our teeth clenched, we were ready for this. We were perfectly alert and prepared for this moment. The communication system in our suits crackled to life, and Stephen's voice greets us with anticipation.
There she is.
He's whispering. He's nearly crying, and I'm sure we're all holding our breath.
West, on the ground, leaning against the third boulder away from us.
We stop the vehicles immediately and get down from them as carefully as possible. We're standing on the surface of the planet Red 42, familiarizing ourselves with the feeling of its gravity and the sand under our feet. But that's far from our focus. We move slowly. Stephen takes the lead with the scientists trained for this kind of situation. They prepare their tranquilizing guns while Stephen goes through the strategy.
Less than 100 feet now. Immobile target. Humanoid in shape and size. Proceed with the reglementary dose.
A hand gesture from the specialist in extraterrestrial beings stops us all in our tracks. I swear that time stops as we watch him prepare the gun, steady his position, and take a slow and steadying breath, and then finally shoot. It happens in the blink of an eye, and yet I feel my entire life pass by me. For a fraction of a second, I'm convinced it's going to fail. I'm certain they messed up the calculations of the planet's gravity, and the gun will miss the target. But then, it happens. The Red 42 woman flinches when a tranquilizing dart sinks into her arm. She looks down at the offending intruder, and then she looks up, directly at us. She's too far away to make out too many details, but I swear I can see her eyes widening. And I swear she's looking right at me. Then she falls backwards, dropping unconsciously to the ground. I don't wait for anybody's signal to start running towards her. I stumble through the dust and dirt of the planet's surface, but I don't stop. I completely ignore the warnings and orders I hear through the comms in my suit helmet. My mind is singularly focused on only one goal. The closer I get to her, the more incredible she looks. She's supposed to be the most extraordinary creature in the universe, and yet everything about her looks familiar. When I finally reach her side, I can't help but stop and take my time just staring at her. From the soles of her feet, her calves and knees to her stomach, both of her hands, her shoulders, and her slender neck, it all looks completely and undeniably human. Her face, peaceful in sleep and objectively beautiful, is something one could stare at in awe forever. Nothing about her suggests she's anything but human. She has pink lips, thin eyebrows, dark hair, and even a handful of freckles over the top of her cheekbones. She could be a face you'd see out in the streets, in a classroom, at a restaurant. Hell, she could be the face I see in the mirror every day. This only makes her more inconceivable and fascinating. I kneel down beside her unconscious body and smile at my discovery. "Hello there," I whisper to her. And then the greatest shock of my life comes at me when she opens her eyes and stares at me. I have the horror to be the first person to see those green eyes up close. More than that, I feel my heart skip a beat as I watch her open her mouth and speak to me. She speaks softly, with an indescribable edge to her voice, but almost the exact same cadence I used a second ago.
"Hello there,"
she says to me. I just don't have time to do or even think about anything else. She immediately springs into action. She moves with the might and agility of a great feline. She shoves me with the palms of her hands, using inhumane strength, and sends me flying several feet away from her. I crash on my back as the air is knocked off my lungs. Then she leaps on top of me. Under the thunder of frightening screams and orders from the comms in my suit, I swear I hear something rip and tear apart on the suit itself. I'm paralyzed by fear, ready to have those alien yet human green eyes be the last thing I see before I die. And then her eyes roll to the back of her head. She shudders for a second and falls on top of me, completely unconscious. This time for real, with a tranquilizing dart on her back with enough power to sedate something 5 times her size. My team immobilizes the Red 42 woman and ties her to one of the vehicles. They do their best to patch up the small ruptures on the shoulders of my suit, where the woman's hand did nearly catastrophic damage. But I'm still alive, so I'm guessing it's true that even a minimal amount of air from this planet that may or may not have slipped through the injured fabric is not enough to kill a person. Still, I know all of us are nervous and fearful the entire time as we drive back to the ship and the laboratory. When we get back to our makeshift headquarters, we make sure that the straps of the examination table could keep even a lioness in place, and then we hook the woman to a steady supply of anesthetic to keep her asleep. I'm persuaded to take a seat in the secondary room of the laboratory, so everyone can make sure that I'm not sick or contaminated or injured in any way. As soon as my health is approved by my peers, I attempt to go back to work, but I'm surprised to face some resistance. Stephen tells me,
Melanie, let's just take a step back, okay? We can afford a few minutes to assess the situation and consider our next move, right?
What is there to consider? I wonder. The only possible step now is to start the medical examination.
We could kill her.
Vincent blurts out that ridiculous suggestion, and he's lucky I'm too shocked to slap him before he gets to explain himself.
I mean, that thing is clearly dangerous, Dr. Lee. It attacked you. Surely you'll be able to study the body of the creature when it's dead. We don't have to include that in the report. We'll say that we found her dead already. It's safer that way.
I face the man that's supposed to be in charge of the mission, and I tell him, it's also brutal, completely unnecessary, and a surefire way to ruin 1,000 opportunities of knowledge we could achieve while studying a living, breathing subject. After a brief pause, I speak the question that I know will get under his skin, just enough to let me work in peace for a while. I look him in the eye and say, "Are you scared, Vincent?" He's silent for a few seconds, but eventually he scoffs and waves me off, just like I knew he would.
Oh, what the hell?
He grumbles and begins to turn around to hide in the more comfortable quarters inside the ship.
Do as you please, Melanie, but for God's sake, be careful.
I'm grinning the entire time when I clap Stephen's back and lead him into the room of the laboratory that is exposed to the atmosphere of the planet. Both of us, along with one of the other scientists specialized in the area, put on our suits and enter the room. I walk in first, slowly, and feel my heart beat erratically in my chest. The Red 42 woman is lying motionless on the examination table. Her chest rises and falls almost imperceptibly. There's an intravenous catheter on her arm, dispensing the anesthetic. We enter the room and find our positions slowly, silently. However, as soon as I am standing beside her, the woman opens her eyes again. I stifle a gasp and search through my mind for something reasonable to say, but she beats me to the punch.
For God's sake, be careful.
Now that's interesting. It's definitely the voice I remember, but it's Vincent's exact tone. She must have heard him, even through the door separating both rooms. I glance behind me at Stephen, who exchanges a look with our colleague and confirms my suspicion.
A case of vocal mimicry. Perfectly common in species of birds on Earth, and there's one known case in an extraterrestrial being. Much more advanced, but nowhere close to this.
I nod at him and tell him, "Begin the tests. Let me talk to her." While Stephen moves to the other side of her to get a head start on the blood samples and activate the scanners that hang from above the examination table, I take a deep breath and face our subject again. "So, you can imitate the words, but is there a chance you understand their meanings? Can you form your own original sentences?" She stares at me, not quite expressionless, just focused, concentrated, but she remains quiet. I decide to make a new attempt. I point to myself and say, "I am Melanie." Then I point to my colleague and say, "He is Stephen." I'm fascinated to see her eyes following my movements, glancing at Stephen, and returning to me when I point at her and say, "And you are Rose." She doesn't even flinch as Stephen takes several blood samples. Her eyes are fixed on me. Then she says, slowly building to a unique inflection of voice,
"I am Rose."
In a way that I can only assume will become a routine for us, Rose attacks me again. It happens in the blink of an eye. A moment of peace followed by a feeling of terror and betrayal. She opens her mouth as if to speak again, but instead her teeth snap together, and at the clicking sound, some internal mechanism in her mouth spits directly at me. I stumble backwards. I crash against a shelf of medical instruments and Stephen runs screaming to my side.
Melanie! Melanie, are you okay? Melanie, get back into the other room, quick!
He sounds as desperate as me. I don't know what he can see, but I know that from my point of view, the glass that covers the front of my suit's helmet is covered in a gooey, sizzling green substance that is rapidly melting my only protection against Rose and her planet. Miraculously, Stephen manages to push me through the doors in time. We crash down on the floor and he helps me rip the helmet off my face and breathe the clean air of the closed room of the laboratory. Both of us stare at the helmet as the last of the glass gives way. A few seconds more, and there's a high chance that whatever Rose spit at me would have harmed, deformed, or disintegrated my face. When I turn to Stephen, I'm barely wise enough to hold back my laughter, but I can't help but say, "She's wonderful. I have to go back immediately." Unfortunately, before I can return to Rose, I'm forced to sit through a so-called emergency meeting to discuss my safety and Rose's fate. Every single thing I hear is worse than the previous one. Eventually, I snap at them and say, "I'm not killing her! I'm not putting her in a fucking cage, and I'm definitely not giving up on Rose!" Stephen frowns at me and asks,
When did we agree on naming her?
That makes me scoff. We named the robot, for God's sake! This makes sense!
It absolutely doesn't!
Vincent exclaims, slamming his hand on the table between us.
That is a wild animal! An alien! An unknown creature, okay? Dr. Lee, you're taking completely unnecessary risks to treat her as a human being.
She's close enough! I insist. You heard the recording from the laboratory. She can talk, and she's tricked me twice. It's undeniable. She's intelligent.
Or maybe you're just...
Don't you dare! Stephen steps in just in time. He tells me,
Melanie, hold on. You need more than mimicry and one sentence to prove she's intelligent life. Do you actually have a plan?
As a matter of fact, I do. We have access to the database of...
The research center?
NASA?
A public library, I say. My question thoroughly confused the men, but I managed to get them to go along with me, and at the very least, my idea buys us some time. This idea isn't mine. Something barely more methodic than this was done with a specimen capable of producing a mimicry found on a different planet. A specimen that, I'm sure, shares components with some of the blood we found on this planet too. The plan is to leave an audiobook on English grammar playing from the speakers in the laboratory for Rose to absorb as much knowledge as possible. Words and their meanings, sentence structures and examples. The rest? Logic, reason, instincts. Well, I just hope that it all comes included in the human brain that I'm almost certain she has. In the meantime, we sit down to discuss the results of the blood samples. Stephen clears his throat and addresses the room.
Normally, I love to agree with you on these matters, Dr. Lee, but given our highly hazardous circumstances, it actually doesn't bring me much pleasure to say that... It seems you're right. The blood sample from the Red 42 woman is a nearly perfect match with that of an average woman. Of course, there are dozens, possibly hundreds of additional elements on her system that are natural from this planet. Things that would explain her unusual strength, why she needs an extremely high dose of anesthetics to put her to sleep, and also, well, the way she can spit venom. Additionally, the results from the scanners, while preliminary, don't show anything out of the ordinary. Same number and shape of bones, same organs in the same places as ours. There are variations, of course, anomalies, little things here and there that, well, Melanie, forgive me for saying so, but these are things we won't fully understand until we open her up. Maybe we could... God damn it. I can't believe I'm about to suggest asking for permission from an alien, but... Melanie, maybe you could get her to consent for a small surgery so we know everything we're dealing with.
I immediately shake my head and crush his dreams. She wouldn't survive the kind of surgery you all would want to perform on her, I tell them. And then I remind them. The specimen found on planet Atlas 4 is already on his way to a museum. They killed it before they knew if there were more.
But now we know there's probably one here too, right? Come on, Melanie, in the name of science, right?
Exactly!
Vincent exclaims.
That monstrous creature strapped to the examination table is probably not even unique. Let's go out and hunt another one and cut it open before someone gets attached. Or, even better, we induce them to reproduce, and then we have an endless supply, and...
She's not a fucking animal! She's a human! She's a woman! My yell doesn't completely deter Vincent. I catch him flinching, but a second later he's hissing at me saying,
She's a woman when I say she's a woman.
I can't take it anymore. I jump out of my seat and tell him, go fuck yourself! I turn around and walk toward the door of the meeting room of the ship. I'll go talk to her. I'll prove she's intelligent life and thus can't be sacrificed like a guinea pig. Then, when I'm almost sure none of them can hear me, I quietly add, I'm going to save her life. It's a promise. Finally, the time has come to really get to know the woman that changed my career, my life, and possibly all of human history. It won't be easy. I just hope that the spark of life and intelligence that I saw in her eyes since the very first moment is still there, and is enough to save her life. I know nobody will follow me, so I allow myself to risk everything, once and for all. I'll have to be quick, so I have to forego some precautions. I put on my suit, but when I reach the exterior room of the laboratory, before even talking to Rose, I bring her into the interior room. If my plan has any hopes of working, I need to prove she's as human as us, and the results from her tests are convincing enough to make me take the risk of introducing her to an environment that imitates the air on planet Earth. Once we're safely inside, I deactivate the cameras and microphones of the room, and then I stand beside the examination table. I dive right in and ask her, Are you going to try and kill me again?
Yes.
She answers immediately. For such a threatening statement, I'm nothing short of delighted. Please don't, I tell her. I'm trying to help you. I trust you. Then I proceed to do the most foolish thing I've done so far, just to prove my trust in her. I take off the helmet of my suit. She seems interested, and observes my movements the entire time. Surprisingly, this time she takes the lead and asks me,
Am I the monstrous thing strapped to the examination table?
She's still repeating words. That's exactly what Vincent said minutes ago, back on the ship. But she's formed that question by herself, and her tone is uniquely hers. She understands exactly what she's saying, and that's exactly why, instead of confirming her suspicions, I tell her, You have a good ear. Which is a wild understatement, considering how far apart the two rooms are.
And you don't,
She retorts.
I was screaming for help.
Her words are like a knife through my chest. I'm sorry, I say to her. I'm here now, and I want to help you.
I know.
She says, which takes me by surprise.
I could hear you. The other two think I'd be more helpful dead, but you want to keep me alive. All I want is to be free. Why can't you let me go and leave this place? Is that so difficult?
It's not exactly difficult, but it's not so simple either. Listen, can I call you Rose? She takes her time to consider the question, and she nods. But then it seems she remembers something from the audio she had been listening to, and she tells me,
That's a flower.
Yes, a beautiful one, from my planet. I explain, and then finally, I share my plans. That's where I think we should go. I think you should come with us.
What?
She snaps at me in a way that's so human it's just endearing. Listen, Rose, I'm sorry we dragged you into this, and I hope someday you'll forgive me for the part I played in this, but if I can convince them that we could study you better on Earth, as soon as you step onto the planet, I'm certain you'll acquire the same rights as any other woman. You're human enough. Anyone can tell. Nobody will be able to do anything to you without your approval. I know it won't be your home, but you'll be safe. I will keep you safe, I promise. Aren't you curious about what other planets look like? Rose thinks about this for a very long time, and every doubt anyone could have of her human intelligence wouldn't stand a chance at the way she looks up at me and says,
There's something else you're not telling me.
That earns a sigh from me. This is a tough conversation, but I have her best interests in mind, so I introduce her to the second part of my plan. I have a feeling I could persuade them to respect you, if we had something we could offer them in exchange.
Something like me?
Not quite. Not something human.
So, that means you're perfectly fine with killing something that, what, doesn't look like you, doesn't speak your language? I don't think you're as good as you think you are, Melanie.
That makes me pause. I frown at her and try to wrap my mind around the countless twists that this mission has taken. I think I underestimated her intelligence. Rose, I'm trying to help you, I tell her. I know this is complicated, but we can discuss our morals later. Do you think we can offer them something? I know a different discovery will take the focus off of you. Once again, Rose stays quiet for a while, thinking it through. I observe every change in her face as she reaches the new conclusion that she will slowly reveal to me.
There is nothing like me on this planet. I think. At least, I've never seen one. I'm from your planet, aren't I?
You seem to be, I answer. But I have no idea how you could have possibly appeared here.
Well, I know where I came from. But wait. You also found something here that you have seen on a different planet, right?
It's not exactly the question. She knows the answer. She's been listening to us since the moment we brought her here. She's guiding me through her thought process, and I'm happy to let her take the lead. I think I know where this is going. Oh, I mumble. My mind is running with possibilities. Yes, that's right, I tell her. Do you think there's something taking species from other planets and dropping them here? She shakes her head slowly.
I'll show you where we come from. But you'll have to promise you'll keep me safe. You won't let them kill me. You'll take me to your planet. You'll show me the flowers you named me after. You'll introduce me to the creatures that look like me. And I won't be an experiment to you.
I don't even have to think about it. I promise. I tell her immediately, meaning the words more than anything else in my life. Just a couple of hours later, I'm standing in the middle of nowhere on this little red planet. I'm standing along with Stephen, Vincent, my fellow scientists, and the astronauts that accompanied us. Rose is with us, wearing a spacesuit as well, though she proudly rejected the protective helmet. We're standing in front of the oddly luminescent rocks that we've been seeing since landing on the planet. Upon closer inspection, and an explanation from Rose, we can see that these aren't rocks at all. These are eggs. These boulders have been eggs all along, and from each of them, a completely unique creature comes out. Something from Earth, something from planet Atlas 4, things we've never seen before, things from planets we might never find. I thought this would be the end of my mission, but it turns out it's just the beginning of an even bigger mystery. And, just as well, the beginning of the life of an extraordinary woman that's on her way to Earth for the very first time in her life. Hi sci-fi horror fans, it's Kira Rhodes. Thank you to all the amazing VAs who took part in this project, and thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thank you to all of our official members of the channel. Your support means a lot to us. Craving another scary tale? Click on that video on your screen. Until next time everyone, and remember, stay cosmic.